Good night, you guys. Hello, my name is Christanie, and in today's video I have a few topics I would like to talk to you guys about, right? But today's session I want to make it a little bit more relaxed. What I've been meaning to talk to you guys about is a few things, and I'm just gonna get right into it because I have a few things in mind, right? So the first thing I want to discuss, but these all have to do with relationships, right? With relationships within movies that I really love, right? So the first one we're gonna get into is the antagonistic lovers. The antagonistic lovers. Okay, for instance, Twilight, as I mentioned before in my paranormal story time video for my Spookfest, my Halloween Spookfest, I did read you guys an excerpt from Twilight, right? Okay, so I read you guys an excerpt from Twilight. So we're first gonna go into Twilight, and then we're gonna keep going and going until I formulate the whole gist of this video. Okay, so Twilight, as I explained in that video, is the Halloween special video. I explained to you guys Twilight was when Bella Swan moved into Forks, Washington, right? Yeah, she moves into Forks, Washington, which is a small town. And when she goes into Forks, Washington, she meets, while she's in school, she's the new kid in town, so everybody's fascinated by her. And one day while she's at school and she's sitting with a group of really friendly students, she notices them. Now, them is the Cullens, right? And the one that really catches her eyes is Edward Cullen, right? So the basis of Twilight is that Bella falls in love with this very attractive vampire, right? Who's going under the pretense of being another student along with his adopted brothers and sisters, right? So this brothers and sisters story is basically what the vampires, the Cullens, use so that they could go undercover and hide what they truly are, which is vampires, right? So in Twilight, when Bella is introduced, she's not introduced him, when the other students tell her about Edward Cullen, she notices the Cullens right off the bat, right? Because they're very attractive. They look like students and their names are kind of they look like old century names, right? So the thing that I find that's really cool about Twilight is that the whole time she's wondering, she's fascinated by Edward, right? Because he's the youngest of the Cullen crew and he's the only one that's not paired up. And he's the only one that's not paired up. So he's the boyish looking one. She describes him as being boyish, right? So when she goes into biology class and the only seat that's available is near Edward Cullen, she's very surprised and shocked that he, his reaction to her, right? So his reaction to her is that she's a new kid in school, and so she goes into the cafeteria. She sees these really interesting group of kids called the Cullens, right? Who are actually vampires in disguise, and they're actually centuries old, right? They actually moved into Forks, Washington, which is a small town, because they're trying to not attract any attention to them, to what they actually are, which is vampires, right? So they want to just blend in and pretend that they're students when they're really centuries old, right? So she notices especially Edward Cullen, who she calls the boyish looking one of the Cullens, right? Because he's also, as I said before, the ones that's not the only one that's not paired off, right? So the next sequence is that she goes into biology class, right? She goes into biology class and the only seat that's available is the one, surprise surprise, the one that's near Edward Cullen, right? the one that's near Edward Cullen. So when she goes into biology class, she goes and Mr. Brown, the biology teacher, gives her her tools and sets her on her way. She sits next to Edward, and what she's really surprising to her is that he seems he starts acting pretty odd, like peculiar even, right? He acts actually really peculiar. And when you look back at my excerpt, or if you read on the Twilight the book, you'll see that he just seems like he seems repulsed by her, right? And what she describes, what his behavior is like, it's almost like he's glaring at her, but he's making sure to sit at the farthest end away from her. And not only is he sitting at the farthest end away from her, he's also at the edge of his seat and like far away from her. And he's also very tense. His fists are clenched, and she doesn't understand what's going on, right? So as soon as the class is over, he just jumps out and he leaves the class as quickly as he can. Like, he just literally sprints out of the class, right? So her reaction is like, why is he being so cruel? What's wrong? Why is he acting this way, right? But the thing that Bella Swan doesn't understand is that from what you're getting later on, when they meet, and when they actually finally meet, is that the reason that he's doing that is, there's a very good reason why he's doing that. He is doing that because he's actually acting that way because he is extremely interested in Bella, but he doesn't understand his feelings really, because he's never really fallen for a girl before. And the way he feels for her, it's like, first of all, he's a vampire, right? So he feels like he's a danger to her life. Second of all, he describes that when he smells Bella, right? When he smells her, it's like the intensity by which she wants to her blood is very attractive to him, right? So that it's like he feels like he could be a threat to her life. Like, he doesn't want to endanger her life, right? Because he's a vampire after all, right? And he doesn't want to do something where he ends up harming her, right? But at the other end is that it's not so much that he wants to harm her, it's that it's something even deeper than that. He's actually very attracted to her, right? And he doesn't understand what he's feeling, right? So Twilight, when I first read it in 2005, the summer of 2005, is what I noticed about it is that what you notice about it is it uses that classic trope of the antagonistic lovers, right? I love the antagonistic lovers, the way that's one of my favorite type of character scheme, like the scheme to use in when they use that in a book of romance or like a novel, when the two lead characters that are supposed to be like involved with each other, be interested in each other, have that antagonism going on, right? It's very interesting, right? So Twilight is a classic antagonistic lovers, right? So after the scene when he automatically jumps out of his seat, there's a point where I think she goes into the faculty office, and she sees his back, and what she realizes is that he's trying to change the class. He's trying his best so that he could switch classes, right? So she doesn't really understand why it seems like he just hates, like it seems like he actually absolutely hates her, and she doesn't understand why, right? Because she hasn't really done anything to him, right? And from the other student, what she's getting is that this is not his normal behavior, right? So what she's noticing is actually not just in her head, right? So there's a point where she almost gets hit by a truck by one of the students. I believe it's Lee. I'm gonna write everything I did not get correctly in the description so that I could get the correct facts about it. But she almost gets hit by a car, and then for some reason it's like she's about to get hit, and then another second he's right in front of her, like stopping the car and saving her, right? And in the book, there's a point where she's in the hospital and she's saying, you know, why didn't you let the car just kill me? Why didn't you let it destroy me? Since you're always so like you're always so condescending, and you're always giving me a hard time. And he's like, yo, why would I? Why the way he responds actually surprises her, because he's like, you know, like he actually shows parts of his feeling when he responds, and he's like, later on when they meet, you're gonna see that the reason that he is acting so malevolent or like ambivalent towards Bella Swan is because he actually really deeply cares for her, right? And that's how Stephanie Myers uses the antagonism, and she uses it very well between them, right? Like in the scenes leading up to when they actually admit their feelings for each other, what you will notice is that there's a lot of like ambiguousness going on in it, right? Like they don't, especially when the interactions together, it seems like they're always at each other's throats, when it's actually they actually want to do something very different, right? So that's the antagonistic, that does the heavy use of the antagonistic lovers type of trope that I really love, right? So in the second one that I really like is Pride and Prejudice, right? Now Pride and Prejudice is by, I forgot who wrote Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is okay, so when you look at Twilight and antagonistic lovers, what you see is that it's like Pride and Prejudice, right? Between Pride and Prejudice, hold on, let me see who wrote Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is a novel by Jane Austen. I almost forgot that. Pride and Prejudice is a novel by Jane Austen, right? And it involves, okay, so Elizabeth Bennet, right? So I always get that confused. So Elizabeth Bennet is the antagonism between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy, it's kind of cool, right? I kind of like it, because Pride and Prejudice, it has something with the British mannerisms, right? Where everything is just like little nuances, right? And what I love about Pride and Prejudice is, like, I never thought I would like old century novels until I began to read it because of an English class I had at my present college at CUNY MEC, right? So I had to read it. I read most of it, and it's actually pretty interesting, right? Now what I love about British novels and British series is that they're not like Spanish novellas or Spain novellas or those telenovelas where it's like soapy, and it's not like General Hospital where they give you everything in a platter, and they have suspense and it has like drama and all that stuff. When you look at British dramas, it's very different than like the more soapier American, Spain, Mexican telenovela, Spanish pattern, like African dramas, because it's like they don't give you everything on a platter, right? Think Hyacinth on WLNY. I don't know, the Hyacinth, if you look at the drama Hyacinth with that elderly lady and her husband, you'll get what I'm talking about. So British dramas, they're a little bit more subtle. They're a little bit more subtle with how they bring on the drama, right? But in Pride and Prejudice explains this exactly, right, to the T. So Elizabeth Bennet, it's all about like them courting, like them ensuring that they get married, all of them, the sisters. And she has a sister she really loves, I think it's Jane, but Mr. Darcy, who's like a well-to-do suitor, he ends up messing with her beloved sister who she really loves. Elizabeth, Jane. Okay, so Jane has a suitor, right? Jane, I believe her sister's name is Jane, right? Jane, her sister, Elizabeth's sister, is like, she's like a sweetheart, right? Elizabeth loves Jane, right? Because Jane is like, she's the best sister, and Elizabeth loves Jane. They have a great relationship, right? I'm pretty sure that's the sister's name, right? So Jane is about to find a suitor. Yeah, she's met a suitor, and again, I'm gonna write everything in the description, right? So then she met the suitor, and everything's going well. And but the thing about Jane is that she doesn't want to come off as though she's too eager, you know. So she's trying to play it off. So Mr. Darcy ends up doing something where it ends up like messing up Jane's chances to get with the guy that she really likes, because he says something that almost messes it up for Jane, right? So Elizabeth is pissed off at Mr. Darcy, and for that reason, there's a lot of things going on with Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. Like, she really can't stand him because Elizabeth loves Jane, her sister, right? She's like, she loves her a lot, right? And the fact that Mr. Darcy had something to do with messing up her sister's chances of finding a good suitor, which the guy was gonna be for her, right? So then in the end of Pride and Prejudice, it ends up working out because Mr. Darcy sees the error of his ways, and in the end, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth end up together. But the whole thing is that there's a parts of the book where it's like there's other girl that really likes Mr. Darcy, but you could tell Mr. Darcy is just, he's all like, Elizabeth has him wrapped around her fingers, right? Because the way that she's not buying into his crap, it literally catches his attention in a way that all the other girls who keep throwing themselves at him doesn't, right? Like, Elizabeth doesn't care about who Mr. Darcy is and that he's like very rich and well-to-do, right? She could care less, right? She could care less. And the fact that he messed up her sister's chances of being with a great guy that the sister really liked, and who Elizabeth loves, her sister, that pisses her off even more into hating Mr. Darcy, right? So Mr. Darcy, when he finds out that what he did was wrong, he corrects what he did, right? I'm pretty sure that's the basis, right? That's the basis of Pride and Prejudice, because it was a long time since I read it, and what's end up is, in the very end, things end up, you know, good between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, right? They end up, you know, because what I really found that's so interesting about antagonistic lovers is that they're always in denial, right? Everyone around them is like, oh, when are you two just gonna come together, right? But it's almost like they're the last ones to know. And what I find so interesting about them is that they'll always bring up the other person's name, and the family members will be like, oh, okay, so you're thinking about him again, right? So, if you look at my movie review of Emerald, classic case of antagonistic lovers, right? This is classic case of antagonistic lovers. So then in Twilight, to conclude what I'm about to say about Twilight, in Midnight Sun, which is the Edward's thoughts in reverse, it's the reverse of Twilight, where Twilight is Bella's point of view. Midnight Sun, we see it's Edward's, is the recounting of Twilight according to Edward's point of view, right? So when you see her, he's in the lunchroom. What he's actually thinking is that when he's actually he's pretty like when Bella comes into the school, she's the talk of the whole town, right? And what you must know in Midnight Sun is that it's revealed that Edward has a gift in which he could read people's minds, right? And the funny thing about it is that when Bella comes into the scene, the only person he cannot read the mind of is Bella, and that strikes him as odd, right? And when she sits next to him, it's like he's intensely attracted to her, right? But it's like when you read certain parts, you understand why he acted a certain way in Twilight, right? Which is very interesting, right? Because I did read excerpts of Midnight Sun. Okay, let's discuss Cinderella, right? It's like an age-old fairy tale, and Cinderella has its origins from France, right? Although almost every culture and nationality has a version of Cinderella, right? We know that in China there's a version called Yexian, I believe. In Haiti there's one that's called Tissoufui, which really resembles the original Brothers Grimm, which has the magic tree, in which magic tree comes alive, and it's like her mother is the one that's dead. But you know what I realized about Cinderella is that, and like fairy tales in general, is that they're really, although you like, we see a lot of people they try to make things more politically correct and more gender equal. Like I remember there was a time where I went on Instagram, and it was like this cute little meme where this giraffe is interviewing the like Snow White. Okay, so to get back to what I was saying, so next little story I'm gonna say is The Wrong Woman. Now if you look back in my videos, you see I did a little synopsis, like a synopsis of The Wrong Woman, but I just want to do a little more review since I'm doing little stories of the little analysis of the stories that I find really interesting, right? So then in The Wrong Woman, it stars Inyobong Edo Ekim as Vivian, right? And it stars Uche Jumbo as Chacha, Kali Ikwegu as Greg. Wait, is it Greg? Yeah, it's Greg. Ngozi Nzenyu as Chacha and Greg's mother, and then Maralisi Chinda as Vivienne, who is the woman that Greg is actually involved with, right? So within The Wrong Woman, I'm just going to do a brief synopsis since I already did a synopsis of it already. This is one of my most favorite African movies, and it's part of the reason why I love, Ini Edo, and it's part of the reasons why I absolutely love and I cherish Ini Edo. Inyobong Edo Ekim is because of this movie, right? Like, I liked her before, but in this movie I love her the most, right? This movie was it for me, right? So in this movie, it starts off with Ini Edo's Vivian's uncle reading her poem, wanting to read her poems, right? It's like it's a lazy afternoon, and it's like she's just chilling out, and from the movie you see that something happened to her mom because she's being taken care of by the uncle and the aunt. So I think she's orphaned, and then what she's expecting is that she's gonna go to her uncle who lives in, I believe, Abuja. I believe he lives in Abuja, and then he lives in Abuja, and wait, he lives in either Abuja or Lagos. Abuja, I believe, one of them, right? I'll write it down in the description. And she's supposed to go to work for him, and she's supposed to go by train, right? But it's gonna be like, she's gonna have to be like, it's gonna be a long ride, right? Because she doesn't have that much money. They're not rich, right? They're of limited means. So in the movie, it starts off with the uncle wanting to read her poems. Now Ini Edo's character Vivian doesn't believe in stuff like that, right? She fully is like Christian, and she doesn't believe in stuff with mysticism and stuff like that, right? So he's like, come on Vivian, just let me read your poem. So then by some chance she entertains him, and then he reads her poem, and what he reads is that she's gonna get to go to a free trip of a lifetime to Lagos, and what she's gonna do is that she's gonna go to Lagos and Abuja, I believe, Abuja or Lagos, and she's going to meet the love of her life, and it's gonna work in her favor. But it's gonna be a free trip, fully paid for, and it's gonna be a chance of a lifetime, right? And he says it's gonna be prosperous, and she's gonna have good fortune. Now, he's reading her poem, and he's telling her that she's gonna get good fortune. She's like, wow, you're reading my palm, you know, and I'm gonna get good fortune, go figure, right? She doesn't take anything what he's saying very seriously at all, and she just waves him up, right? She waves him off, right? And she doesn't believe he has any type of gift. But the peculiar thing about the movie is that in the next scene we see that Greg, who's like a very successful business tycoon, he calls his sister Cha-Cha, and he tells her he needs to go pick up his fiance Vivienne, right? So Vivienne is played by Mansa Chinda, and in the movie she has such a horrible temper, right? And what Cha-Cha and Ngozi and Zenyu know, Cha-Cha's mom know, is that Greg is notorious for picking out the wrong women, right? He always like picks women that they're high tempered, high strung, high maintenance, and they generally have just a nasty attitude, right? So then Greg tells Cha-Cha to go to Abu Bakr Road, I believe, to go to Abu Bakr Road to pick up the love of his life, Vivienne, who is played by Mona Lisa Chinda, right? That's the real Vivienne. But Cha-Cha being the one, she's into fashion, she's into dance, she's into everything just fun, she's not really listening to what he's saying, and she ends up by some mistake at Abu Bakr Lane, right? So Abu Bakr Road and Abu Bakr Lane are like, they seem like that's the same name, but they're very different places, right? One is very different from each other, right? Because they're not the same thing, right? So then she goes to Abu Bakr Lane, where Vivienne, not Vivienne, Vivienne played by Ini Edo, is residing, and she comes in fully dressed with her car and her car, and she goes to Abu Bakr Lane, number 34 Abu Bakr Lane, and that's where she meets Ini Edo, right? Ini Edo, Vivienne. And when she meets Vivienne there, she knocks on the door, she meets Vivienne, she tells her, I'm here to pick you up. Are you Vivienne? I'm here to pick you up. And she's like, oh, who are you? How are you here to pick me up, you know? And she's like, look, Greg's waiting for you, and he wants me to come pick you up. And she's like, she goes back to her uncle, and she's just shocked. She's like, how could you have known that I'm gonna have a free trip to Lagos, and there's a guy waiting there for me, and everything's been paid, and the flight's been paid? And she's like, how could you have possibly have known that? And she's like, look, I do have many gifts, but the aunt is like, she's thinking like, well, how could this be? And he's like, look, I told you I had a gift, right? So he's basically he's agreeing that like he knew that he saw something in her palms, right? It's like, so Ini Edo Vivienne is like, how could you have possibly have known this? And she's thinking to herself that maybe it's like some mistaken identity, right? Which it actually is. She's right. So she goes back to Cha-Cha, played by Uche Jumbo, and she's telling Cha-Cha, so she's trying to rectify, see if she got the wrong Vivienne, right? But Cha-Cha, since she's never met Vivienne, played by Manasi Chinda, Greg's actual woman that he actually loves, she can't really explain how she's mistaken Vivienne, right? Because she's never met Greg's real girl that he's interested in, right? This is the first time she's even meeting her, right? You know? So then Ini Edo Vivienne goes back to the uncle, and she's like, so what do you guys think I should do? And the aunt's like, what do you think I should do? You should go back and tell her that she's got the wrong person and clarify what's going on. And the uncle's like, look, we can't tell you what to do, right? You have to, with your own sense, figure out what you have to do. Because when I saw in your poem, I saw a free trip to Lagos. Now you have to make what you need to make of what that is, right? So long story short, Ini Edo Vivienne gets dressed, right? She gets dressed and she has her suitcase, and she ends up with a lot of guts going with Cha-Cha into the car so that they could meet Greg and go to Lagos, right? And the only reason that she's doing this is because it's not so much what the uncle said, but because she has another uncle who has work in Lagos, and hearing that Cha-Cha has a plane ride directly to Lagos, it sounds a lot better. It sounds a lot better to her than taking the long train there. So she, against her better judgment, actually goes and takes this trip of a lifetime, right? Now this is very gutsy. Like, she has a lot of balls for doing this, right? Because number one, she doesn't know who these people are. She doesn't know anything about these people, and she's just taking this chance, right? Like, it's not something I would do, or anybody who's really thinking about the ramifications of what could happen, right? So then she ends up in the car with Cha-Cha, and Cha-Cha, for some reason, Vivian is 26, she's 26, and Cha-Cha, she's a spunky, fun spirited person, and front of the back, she loves Vivian, right? And Vivian, the way she acts, she loves her character, right? And then they meet up with the mom, played by Ngozi and Zenyu, and the way things start ending up, it's like even the mom starts liking her, because the way she was raised, it was like the way she acts, the mom just loves her character, right? So eventually they get into their house and she's cooking for them, and the mom is testing. She's like, oh, you know what, this is the first time Greg has actually met somebody who I could say I am so proud that he's met, right? Because both Cha-Cha and the mom, they think she's just lovely. They love her so much, right? Because there's something about her character they really take to right off the bat. But what you must know is that Greg keeps calling in, he's calling in, and every time he's calling in, it's like she has to go to use the bathroom, right? Or she has to go, she's choking on something, right? And the reason that this is happening is, surprise, surprise, she's lying in order to get the free trip to Lagos, in order to pull off a switcheroo and then be in a way that she goes to her uncle's house and ditches them at Lagos, right? Just catch a free trip and just ditch them and go to the uncle that has work for her, right? So but the more and more she begins to get into their family, the more she sees how loving, and she begins to really feel guilty for her actions, right? So Greg calls, and then she ends up like running to the bathroom with intestinal issues, right? And so finally, but Cha-Cha's beginning to figure out there's something wrong, is that every time Greg is calling, then she makes up a reason not to talk to him, right? Finally, when her conscience get the best of her, she gets on her knees, and then she's weeping because she feels like she's done the ultimate. She feels guilty, and she fesses up to the mom that, look, I'm sorry, you know, I'm not who you think I am, and there's been a really bad mix-up. You're mixing up with somebody else who's Vivian, maybe another Abu Bakr, number 34 Abu Bakr Road or something, and I'm not the one that you're looking for, right? Now when the mom and the sister find this out, they first of all, they forgive her, and they realize that she's just human, right? They forgive her right off the bat, right? And the second thing that's revealed is Cha-Cha, she's scared to death, right? Because she knows that Greg is gonna kill her, because Greg knows that she never takes anything he says seriously, and for her to make such a bad mistake, he's gonna eat her alive, right? So she's like, oh God, he's gonna kill me, right? And to which any other character, Vivian, she's like, can I please just go and just meet my uncle in Lagos, the one that has work for me? Because she doesn't want to be there when Greg comes in, because she knows it's gonna be bad, right? Because she's posing as if she's somebody else, and if Cha-Cha is that worried, like she's scared that he's gonna kill her, what is he gonna do to her, right? So then Cha-Cha ends up, after much convincing, after any other character, Vivian convinces the mom and Cha-Cha she'll be all right at the uncle's house, who has the work for her. They're like, Cha-Cha drops her off in front of the uncle's house, who has the promise of employment for her, right? But Cha-Cha tells her, look, everything could be forgiven, you know, we really like your character, anything you need, just call and we'll be right there to pick you up, right? So what's ended up happening, she goes and she stands in front of the uncle's compound, his mansion, and then all of a sudden this man comes up to her, and he's just looking side to side and stuff, and he's scared to approach her, and she's like, what's going on? Because he looks suspect, right? So he comes and he comes and he comes, and he's like, listen, right? And he's trying to keep it low, what he's trying to say. He's like, you see that man that's in there? He's like, yeah, that's my uncle's compound. That's my uncle's mansion. He's like, that man in there has been arrested, right? And the man inside that compound has been arrested because several dead bodies have been found buried under the ground. And she's like, what? But how could that be? That's my uncle. He's like, listen, if you know and if you love your life, get away from this compound, because the authorities are going to come, and if you let them take you here, they're going to take you to jail in involvement with what's going on in this compound, right? So she's like, but I don't have nowhere to go. She's like, I don't have nowhere to go. Where am I gonna go? Like, she's afraid now, because she's like, she's just basically left stranded in front of her uncle's compound, which has been implicated in murdering several people whose bodies have been found under the ground, right? Buried under the ground. So then the guy leaves. He's like, look, I told you what I told you. He looks from side to side and he leaves. He quickly speeds off, right? And then finally she's like, man, what? Her hands in her head, and she's like, man, what the hell am I going to do now? And then the authorities, they're like, young lady, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I was just passing by. He's like, you're just passing by? So they arrest her on the spot, right? They arrest her on the spot. So Cha-Cha and the mom, they're in the house, and they're figuring out what they're gonna do about the situation, right? When they get a phone call and they found out that Vivian's been arrested in connection with, like, being in front of a compound that's suspect for several murders, right? Where the owner has been suspect for several murders, right? So then they come back with Vivian, and they later discuss that there's no flights that's going out back to where Vivian came from, back to her hometown. So she has to stay till Sunday, where Greg is gonna have a party, which was meant for the original Vivian, played by Mona Lisa Chinder, right? So then the whole time, what's going on is that the reason the other Vivian cannot even contact Greg is the phone that she has been stolen by a gang of thieves, right? So she's waiting and waiting and waiting for Cha-Cha, for Charlene to come and pick her up, and she doesn't know what's going on. Like, she's pissed off because she's stuck with her sisters, and all she knows is that her brother's little sister, her man's fiance, her man who's suspected to become her fiance because he's supposed to propose to her, his sister's supposed to pick her up, and she still hasn't seen the likes of Cha-Cha. So she's pissed off, right? Pissed off is an understatement for what she's feeling, right? So that she's stuck with her little sisters, and she's just raising hell, right? She's pissed off, right? So then back to Cha-Cha and Vivian. So in the first CD, because most of the African movies in that era, they had 2 CDs, right? They were much longer. They had 2 CDs. The first CD ends up with Greg entering the house, right? Greg enters the house, and the thing you see is that everybody's scared. Everybody's scared. Cha-Cha's scared, Vivian's scared, the mom's scared, right? And in the second CD, it opens up with him asking, hey, could you tell your friend because Vivian was exercising in the living room, could you tell your friend to please take her exercise routine somewhere? And then Cha-Cha's like, you know, and he's asking her what happened to Vivian, and that's when they all have to reveal. They're gonna try to reveal to him that what happened is that she picked up Vivian, right? She did pick up Vivian, and he's like, oh, what happened to Vivian? And Cha-Cha and the mom is trying to explain to him very slowly that Cha-Cha picked Vivian, right? She picked Vivian, but she picked the wrong Vivian, right? And the reason she picked the wrong Vivian is because instead of going to number 34 Hababaka Road, she actually went to the wrong address of number 34 Hababaka Lane, where she picked up the wrong Vivian. So Greg, in this scene, it seems like I love how they set it up. And as you would know, as you would expect, Greg is livid. He's about to kill anybody that's in there, including Vivian. And he says some things that he's not supposed to say, right? But what you must know, what I love about the treatment of this movie is that the whole time Greg is pissed off, and he's calling Vivian everything in the book, right? Iniedo's character, everything in the book, including imposter, liar, like a low-down dirty liar, and everything in the book. The whole time the mom is trying to convince Greg, look, if you just get to know her, you'd love her too, because Cha-Cha and the mom, they're convinced that there's a reason that the mix-up happened, right? And what's so funny in the movie is that in time, due to Vivian's charm and her character, even Greg begins to like her character, right? And then finally when the other Vivian, the one who's actually the real woman of Greg comes in, the way she acts is so disgusting and so like she's just so unlikable, and she's just so high maintenance and so rude that everything, just as the uncle says, just as the uncle said it, because of how Vivian acted and her character, the mom and the sister loving her, everything is gonna end up like it's set up to, let's say, end up in her favor, right? So I'm gonna stop right here with that because I don't want to reveal everything to you. And I love The Wrong Woman because it is so cool how it's such an unlikely story, but we all know that life life imitates art, and there's been other really funny and other like stranger things that have happened in actual real life, right? So I love that about this movie, and it's one of my favorite African films of all time, right? And it's called The Wrong Woman. It stars Ini Edo, Inyobong Edo Ekim as Vivian, Manlisi Chinda as Vivian, the one that's the actual woman and soon to be fiance of Greg, and Greg as Greg, which is played by Kalu Ikwegu. Ngozi Nzenyo is the mom, and Cha-Cha is played by Uche Jumbo, right? So that's one of my favorite African films of all time, right? So in the next trope, the next segue I want to go to is one of my favorite series is Chicago PD, right? Chicago PD. Chicago PD. Okay, Chicago PD is the task force of the Chicago Police Department, and the main characters I really want to get into is Jay Hosted and Erin Lindsay, right? I know I'm always talking to you guys about how much I love Erin Lindsay and Jay Hosted's relationship, but the reason I love it so much is because that it has to do with how real it is, right? It's not like your Titanic relationship where it's like it's so epic and it's so epic and it's feeding you that romance thing, that romance. It's just feeding you romance on a platter like a soap opera, right? It's more like two people, they're on a task force and it's their job is not glamorous, but you see their day-to-day life in the Chicago PD police department, right? And I'm the last one to tell you I would ever like a cop show, but the way they did it, it's like every episode leading up to the 4th episode when Erin Lindsay left was so cool, right? So then there was an episode where like in Chicago PD, from the very first episode, Jay Hosted doesn't shy away from his feelings for Erin Lindsay, right? It's like it's not even like a lie. He doesn't lie to her or lie to himself about how much he really likes her, right? Like some of the things he'll say is that like jobs come and go, like positions come and go, but he doesn't want her to come and go. He wants to make sure she stays in his life, right? And the thing I love about Erin Lindsay and Jay Hosted is like it's not like a fairy tale, right? It's like something you could see yourself. Like you meet a guy on a task force, or you meet a guy at like a department that you're working, or whatever you're doing, like an internship or something, or I don't know, or if you're doing something like you're in school or something and you meet the guy, it's very relatable, you know? So then the other thing that's very relatable about it is that it uses the everyday in and outs of being in the task force to show how stressful their lives are, but throughout the whole time he's always trying to make her life easy for her, right? You know? And one of the things that makes her heart her life really hard for her is the fact that her mom is a junkie. She was a junkie for a long time, and part of her being a junkie, it messed up with her knowing who her father was, because the mother was with a lot of men, right? So throughout the ins and outs of her always like doing paternity tests and getting her heart broken over and over and over again, he's always there for her, right? He's always there for her. He's always there for her. He's always, like, every step of the way trying to make sure that she's all right, while she gets her heart broken over and over again, like man after man, not being her actual father, right? So one of the things that happened is that the mom, there's an episode where the mom actually, there's a bad thing that happens between Jay Halstead and Lindsay, and her mom gets her into like drugs again, right? So she becomes a junkie herself, and the whole time it's like he's trying to pull her out of it, like, and it's like it's such a relationship. Like, what I love about it is that it's the difference between being fed like fairy tales and seeing the real deal, right? It's not like she always has to be constantly saved by him. It's like they're working together to save, to cooperate and reestablish each other, right? He's like her rock, she's like his rock, you know? And what I love about Chicago PD is that it doesn't feed you the Cinderella story, right? But it not feeding you the Cinderella story is not a bad thing, right? Because we all need a little fairy tale in our lives, right? There's a reason that people gravitate towards the Cinderella story, and even all the fairy tales, is because they feed you something that it takes you away from the reality of always being like in a humdrum type of life, you know, right? So then the final thing I would like to tell you is that, and I'm gonna go a little bit deeper, because I feel like sometimes young women are like, they're born, they're fed this thing like Prince Charming is gonna come save you, Prince Charming is gonna come and save you, right? But the thing, there's a few thoughts I would like to conclude this video with, which was kind of a little bit different. Like, I was trying a little bit more uncertain of what I would do this video on, and instead I see that I actually took it and I began to just do the storylines. The thing I actually wanted to what I'm thinking about, that I really wanted to get into for this video, is that the thing I wanted to get into this video, and the main gist of the video, is that don't be fed the idea that everything has to be one way, right? So when I did this 4 type of storytelling to you guys, I really wanted to tie it into a way to show you guys, don't be fed the idea of, okay, you always have to be on a jet plane going to Ibiza and you have to have a fairy tale. It could be like that, you know, it could be like that, which is not wrong, you know, but it could be like a Chicago PD type of thing also, right? Or it could be like a fairy tale where you're single for the rest of your life, but it's like you're just so in love with life that it's amazing just for you being single, right? Do not be fed into the idea that just because your life doesn't look like one particular rubric, that it's not worth it, right? So through Twilight, which is like fantastic with the vampire, through Pride and Prejudice, which is like much to do, much ado about nothing, very nuanced and like little things going on, right? Little instances and little orchestrations of how Elizabeth meets Mr. Darcy. And then when we go into The Wrong Woman, which is kind of like, it could actually happen, because I have heard really peculiar stories of things like that happening. And then finally to Chicago PD, which is very practical. You see 4 types of romance type of ways that it could happen, where you could get into like a relationship where 2 people are involved with each other, but it's not like one, it's not like one thing, right? It's not one thing. Okay, it's not like it's one way of being, right? Which is something we're constantly fed. If you're in the States long enough, if you're in the world, if you're in this life long enough, right? You have to have children by a certain age. You have to be married by a certain age. And I think what it does, it robs you of having the independence and the thought process of what do I want, right? So in my singleness and the benefits of being single video, I told you guys to do some introspection, right? And to realize, or is the reason why you have certain friends, or is the reason why you are in a relationship because you're constantly being fed the ideas that you need a lot of people around you, or you need a guy around you, even though you don't particularly care for the guy. But rather than being alone and waiting for the right person, you're just gonna get involved with any guy because it's much better to be with somebody than to be alone and be with the wrong person, right? So what I really wanted to look at, you guys to look at in this video, is that there's not one way of being, right? And I want to introduce to you guys the thought process, and this is it's a little different, is that I saw this post and it kind of struck me, like when it said that don't be fooled into thinking being average weight, the girl that's average weight, the girl that has a 9 to 5, and the girl that has an average weight, average 9 to 5, and she has a private life, isn't living her best life. Don't be fooled into that, right? The thing I'm noticing is that the more and more I do more introspection, the more I'm beginning to see that these things that they're beginning to force feed down our throats, if you're here long enough, it's really not for me, right? So while I'm a person, I'm a big advocate for eventually finding the one. Like I'm a person, if I had to wait till I'm 50, like I would eventually hope it would be like 36. That's my magic age, 38, 36. And my thing is that I have a few different thought processes on what's the ideal for any relationship, right? For me, for instance, I really relish a relationship that would do with me and a guy, if we ever had a child, living in separate households, right? So that we'd be legally married, but we live in separate households, right? And I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, that's so, why would you do that? Because that's a lot of money you're gonna waste. But to me, I feel that's very doable for me, right? I don't really like traditional norms in a lot of ways, right? And I feel like if you're always like looking at what other people is doing, you could get stuck into the habit of, if I don't get married by 22, 24, 25, that age, if I don't have 2.5 children, if I don't have a white picket fence, like I'm a person, I don't even like houses, right? I don't even like the idea of a house. For me to have a condo or like an apartment, that does it for me, right? A really swanky apartment where I live alone with my kids, and then my husband lives in another apartment or in another house, and he comes and we get together all the time. That's it for me, right? Or if he lives, then we are independent in our own rights, right? I like that more than just a white picket fence in the house, which I really don't like the idea of a house at all. I think that's like a 70s thing, which I really don't like. Like, a lot of people have a lot of ideas of what they keep like pushing down your throat, right? They keep pushing down certain ideas down your throat. Like, you're supposed to be married by this age, you're supposed to have things figured out by this age, and it makes you feel like if you don't have this, that you're lagging. So I guess what I'm trying to say for this video, which has been a little bit, I was trying to formulate what I was thinking, but I wasn't really sure where I was going with this. So where I'm going with this is that don't let anybody tell you where you should be and where you should be arriving at, right? Happiness looks very different for every single person, right? Like when I was looking at The Secret, there was a question where the person was asking, was raising, is if everybody keeps asking of the universe, right? Of the universe, of everything from the universe, won't the universe run out, right? And the thing that they said, which I thought was so interesting, is that happiness doesn't look the same for everyone, right? So for some people, they'd go with what Greta Thunberg, the young lady that does the traveling all around the world. For her, she loves traveling around the world, and she's gonna be an explorer for the rest of her life. She loves that, right? And for some people, happiness looks like just painting and just being at peace and being in the woods and just being really happy into themselves, right? And just fishing, that's happiness to them, right? And the thing that I don't like about social media and like a lot of things in this age is that they keep trying to give you a one-size-fits-all type of lifestyle, and they're shoving it down your throat. And because you're not introspecting enough, you're not looking inwards, you could actually start thinking, oh, that's what I want. And a lot of people get confused if that's what they want. But what they realize is that comes up is that when they actually get that, they actually start getting, they don't feel easy in their spirit. And when they begin to do some inner work, some journaling and some introspection, they begin to see, look, this is not what I want. This is what my mom wants for me, right? Like, this career is not what I want. This is what my parents want for me, right? Like, this marriage of being 16 and getting married right away, this is not what I want, right? This having 8 children by the time I'm 20 is not what I want. This is something that's been shoved down my throat, right? So then what I'm really realizing is that if you live in the States long enough, I don't know how it is anywhere else, you get fed the idea that fame, money, fame, money, fame, money, money, fame, money. That's all it is, right? So then what I'm really seeing is that I really look forward towards the more simplistic aspects of life. I really love having a private life. But then I'm realizing I need to counterbalance it because I'm a little too private, right? So I try to mix it up a little bit, right? But to have a private life for me is so golden, right? So a lot of people in this society, especially in the States, they really like just fame and just recognition. Like I really stave away from stuff like that, right? But I really value my privacy and just having my private life and just really living a modest to more prosperous life rather than just being really rich and just having everything thrown at me. I really love working and the satisfaction in my work and just really relishing and enjoying my life for what it is. And I love things like cooking and like really getting into my style and my fashion. That really does it for me. And like eventually if I meet a guy when I'm like 36, 38 and have a really independent lifestyle with him where we're just like Chicago PD conquering the world together and we're independent and we really feed off of each other and we embellish and we like make each other stronger, that's really it for me, you know? That would be like the ultimate life of which I feel like I am spiritually awakened and I'm spiritually very healthy, emotionally, spiritually, in all those aspects, right? So then that's my video for today, you guys. I hope you really enjoyed it because I really enjoyed doing this video today, you guys. And have a great day, you guys. Have a great one. My name is Christanie and my battery is actually running out right now. So see you guys, you know. Have a great night.